Imagine a voice at midnight, the voice of a woman you thought you knew speaking into a phone with a calmness that makes your skin crawl. "He's not a person anymore," she says. "He wasn't Matt." Then, almost jokingly, a throwaway line that sounds like it came from a storybook villain. "Off with their heads." The man on the other end of the line is frightened. He records the call. Please help this channel grow. Like the video, try the new hype feature, leave a comment and subscribe for more stories. This helps us a lot. Thank you. Days later he shows screenshots and the audio to investigators. The police listen. The words in that recording, combined with messages and other evidence, become the thread investigators pull. That thread will unravel a marriage, a family, and a small Utah community, possibly reveal a body that hasn't been found, and will center on one question. What do you do with an informant story when it is the spark that begins a homicide investigation? This is the story of the alleged confession to a lover and how that informant's voice, a trembling witness who recorded and handed over what they heard, shaped the investigation of Jennifer Gledhill and the disappearance of her husband, Utah National Guardsman Matthew Johnson. What follows is a sober, suspenseful walk through the background, the alleged crime, the painstaking work of detectives, the role of informants and recordings in court, and the aftermath that still ripples through families and the justice system. Much of what we tell you is drawn from court filings and reporting on the case. Where details remain unproven, we'll be careful to use the language of prosecutors and court records. Matthew Johnson was a 51-year-old member of the Utah National Guard, a soldier, a co-parent, a man with a schedule and comrades who expected him at work. Jennifer Gledhill, 41, later reported as 42 in some coverage, was a mother of 3, embroiled in a bitter divorce and a custody fight. Neighbors described the couple as private. Court filings and local reporting paint a picture of escalating conflict that culminated in requests for protections, courtroom filings, and a marriage disintegrating in public ways that once were private. In September 2024, the couple's life began to turn into newspaper copy. According to prosecutors, a contested protective order hearing and a bitter argument were the immediate tinder. Jennifer had sought a protective order that was denied, according to reporting. A few days later, prosecutors allege, Matthew Johnson was shot in the couple's home, and then, as the story would later unfold, his absence began to be noticed when he missed work and then vanished from daily life. Authorities say he was last seen around September 20, 2024, and when he did not appear for work with the Guard a few days later, family and colleagues grew concerned. This is not a story of instant discovery. It is a story of small, ordinary moments that piled into suspicion. Missed clock-ins, unanswered calls, a family home where things suddenly looked different. Neighbors would later say they saw evidence of cleaning and change. Investigators would find signs that, they say, suggested an attempt to remove traces from a bedroom, a replaced mattress, bleach on the wall, bloodstains under the bed. Those observations, when paired with a recorded phone call and screenshots provided by an informant, would change the direction of that. We must be clear. What follows is what prosecutors allege, based on witness statements, text screenshots, and recorded calls provided to police. In the criminal justice system, those allegations are not the same as proof, they are the story the state says it can prove. Treat these as the contours of an accusation that will be tested in court. Prosecutors allege that after a tense confrontation in late September 2024, Gledhill shot her husband while he slept. The alleged time frame centers on September 20th to 22nd. According to the informant's account and subsequent police summaries, she told the man with whom she'd been having an affair how she had used a 9mm handgun to shoot Matthew in the head in their master bedroom. The grim narrative continues. She loaded the body into a rooftop storage container, took it down to her minivan, and buried the body in a shallow grave north of their home. She allegedly attempted to clean the scene. Bleach on the wall and a replaced mattress are part of what police say they found when they searched the house. Blood evidence was reportedly located under the bed and on the bed frame. As of the most recent public reports, Matthew Johnson's body has not been recovered. It is a grotesque image, a bedroom that witnessed a life end, then the frantic work of concealing that end, cleaning, moving, burying. For the people closest to the story, the children who would later be separated from their mother by court order, the soldiers' comrades searching the land where GPS data placed the accused, and the parents of both adults, the allegations read like a trauma unfolding in slow motion. The alleged crime is violent and intimate, and that intimacy is why an informant's account, a whisper told to a paramour, matters so much. That recorded call is not merely gossip. It is the alleged primary admission that launched the investigation into homicide rather than a missing person. This section is the heart of the story you asked for. How the voice of an informant, a man terrified after the words he recorded, galvanized police to build a murder case. According to police reports and subsequent coverage, the man identified in reports only as an unnamed informant or lover became worried after Gledhill allegedly openly admitted to killing her husband. He recorded at least one phone conversation and saved text exchanges. Several days after the alleged shooting, on September 28, 2024, the informant took the recordings and screenshots to authorities. That action converted private terror into a legal lead. Why does a recorded call matter? In criminal investigations, a clear, contemporaneous admission, especially one recorded by a party to the call, can be among the most powerful pieces of evidence. It is not infallible. Context matters, tone matters, memory biases matter, and juries will later be asked to decide whether what is heard is what it sounds like. Still, the informant's recordings and the screenshots of text messages were the kind of evidence that move a case from missing person to possible homicide. Armed with the informant's material, investigators executed searches of the Gledhill home. Reports indicate they found blood on the bed frame and in carpet under the bed, places a person would expect only in intimate, violent contact. Police also reported finding evidence that indicated attempts to clean, posts of bleach on walls, and removed or replaced bedding. A replaced mattress, investigators said, could be consistent with the effort to hide bloodstains. These small traces, blood under a bed, bleach on a wall, are the kind of microscopic testimony that forensic teams use to corroborate a witness's statements. Even when a body is not recovered, forensics can establish that a violent act happened in a location and that someone attempted to obscure it. Investigators also examined digital footprints, cell phone pings, GPS data, and surveillance footage. Reports indicate that investigators used location data to narrow search areas where the accused may have moved after the alleged crime. That data, paired with the informant's statements about burying the body in a shallow grave in a location north of the house, led to organized searches involving Matthew Johnson's fellow soldiers and law enforcement teams. The searches were extensive, a grim community effort not only to find remains but to answer a family's questions. Perhaps one of the most dramatic turns in the investigation came when police arrested Gledhill's parents. In October 2024, authorities charged Thomas and Rosalie Gledhill with multiple counts of obstruction of justice, alleging they had helped their daughter clean the scene and otherwise conceal evidence. Arrest records and press releases say surveillance and cell phone data placed the parents at their daughter's home for hours on a day, consistent with alleged cleanup activity. For prosecutors, the parents' arrest served two roles. It suggested how a family might rally to conceal a violent act, and it became leverage for investigators. Sometimes charging associates or family members can encourage cooperation or at least prevent further concealment. With the informant's recordings, the physical traces found at the house, and the arrests of family members for obstruction, the county district attorney filed charges. Salt Lake County's office brought 9 felony counts against Jennifer Gledhill, including first-degree murder, multiple obstruction counts, tampering with a human body, and other allegations. She pleaded not guilty in court. The prosecution emphasized the recorded call and the corroborating physical evidence as the basis for the charges. The defense would later argue that the evidence could be misinterpreted, that recordings lacked context, and that the lack of a recovered body made a murder conviction an uncertain prospect. During pretrial detention hearings, prosecutors played excerpts of the recorded call and displayed text screenshots in court. The presentation of those materials had immediate consequences. A judge denied bail, citing concerns about flight risk and the strength of the evidence. A denied bail hearing is rarely cinematic in the way a trial is, but it reveals the law's immediate balancing act: protect due process while preventing danger and interference. The recorded call's emotional force, the way Gledhill allegedly described the killing and disposal, was, according to prosecutors, strong enough to keep her detained pending trial. Informants change cases because they supply contemporaneous statements that often could not be reconstructed years later. But informants are human, biased, and sometimes unreliable. Prosecutors know this, which is why corroboration matters. The informant's recording did not stand alone. Blood evidence, bleach, mattress replacement, surveillance data, GPS pings, and actions by family members together made a mosaic. The informant was the spark. Forensics supplied the smoke that supported the spark was real. Defense attorneys will frame informant testimony as self-serving, unreliable, possibly coerced, or given under emotional duress. They will emphasize the absence of a body, the possibility of misinterpretation, and the rights of the accused. Prosecutors, meanwhile, will point to the totality of the evidence and ask jurors to infer the most reasonable explanation for the patterns they see. This tension, informant versus defense, is a dynamic that has played out in courts for generations. In this case, the recorded call made it particularly vivid and public. As of the latest public reporting, charges were filed against Jennifer Gledhill and her parents. The Salt Lake County District Attorney filed 9 felony charges against Gledhill, including first-degree murder and several obstruction counts. Her parents were separately charged with obstruction of justice for allegedly assisting in attempting to conceal the crime. Gledhill entered a not guilty plea and remains detained. Prosecutors moved to keep her from contacting her children, citing concern for the investigation and the children's well-being. Trial dates were set. In some reporting, the trial was scheduled for December of the following year, but court calendars move and motions can change dates, so for the exact current schedule one should consult court dockets or reputable local reporting. One fact remains most wrenching. Matthew Johnson's body has not been recovered publicly. The absence of a body complicates everything. For families, without a body there is no gravesite to visit, no definitive closure. For prosecutors, it complicates the burden of proof. While convictions without a body are possible, they require strong corroborating evidence, which prosecutors argue they have in the recorded admission and the forensic traces at the house. For defense, the lack of a body is the central doubt they will use for reasonable doubt arguments. Beyond courtrooms and headlines, there are children who were raised in the same home where this alleged murder occurred. Custody disputes and protective orders mean that a family's private life has been displaced by criminal process. There are colleagues from the Utah National Guard, men and women who served with Matthew, who organized searches and publicly voiced the pain of searching for a friend who never came home. There are neighbors and a community that must reconcile what they thought they knew with what they were told by law enforcement, and there are the aged parents of the accused, who find themselves arrested and painted by prosecutors as participants in a cover-up. The human consequences are immediate and long-term. Job questions, life insurance disputes, public curiosity, and private grief. Reporting has even highlighted life insurance complications, who gets payments if the insured is missing but presumed dead, and how courts must hold funds until a verdict is reached. Can the prosecution show beyond a reasonable doubt that the recording means what they say it does, and that the informant's account is reliable? Do the forensic traces and circumstantial evidence provide the necessary corroboration to overcome absence of a body? What role did the parents play, if any, and will their charges produce cooperation, plea deals, or further complications? Prosecutors will argue motive, the alleged affair, financial disputes, and a bitter divorce, while the defense will try to frame the narrative differently or raise reasonable doubt about motive and context. Trials are not single moments but long processes of evidence, witness credibility, and legal maneuvering. The prosecution's reliance on an informant's recorded admission makes their story compelling but also invites intense cross-examination and defense narratives that can recast those same words as flawed, misheard, or misunderstood. A whisper can start a storm. In this case, an alleged confession spoken into a phone turned private transgression into a public, criminal inquiry. Informants have always been a paradox in the justice system. Sometimes the only way to surface truth, sometimes unreliable narrators with motives of their own. For the friends and the family in this story, the informant's choice to record and report was both a betrayal and a service. It forced a legal reckoning but also stole privacy and certainty. There is a final, uncomfortable truth at the heart of cases like this one. The justice system must balance the urgent human need for answers with the slow, careful work of proof. A recorded phone call can be powerful. The paint-thin smear of DNA under a bed can be damning. But the law requires more than fear and inference, it requires proof beyond reasonable doubt. That standard is deliberately high because the consequences are absolute: liberty, reputation, and sometimes life or death. As this case moves through its legal phases, imagine the soldier who did not come to work. Imagine 3 children who are missing a father and have a mother accused of ending his life. Imagine the parents now charged with obstruction, watching their lives unravel. These human faces are not footnotes. They are the reason the system moves so slowly and why every piece of evidence, every recording, every stain, every text must be weighed with care. If you take one thing from this story, let it be this: evidence is fragile and truth is often stitched together from tiny, imperfect pieces. An informant's confession can crack a case open, but it cannot replace the work courts must do to confirm whether what was said is the whole truth. There's a moral here for us all about the power of words, the danger of secrets, and the unrelenting need for justice that honors both the victims and the accused.